Welcome to When Elderly Caregiving Upends Your Life, What's Next? It's a YouTube series based on our super popular webinars. Whether you're new to caregiving or deep in the journey, this is the place for you. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can catch the latest episodes when they drop. And like these videos and share with your friends. Thanks, and let's get started. And one of the things that came up in the discussion that I was in is, okay, so I know all these activities of daily living, but the elderly caregiving journey is hard to plan for, and it's pretty random, and every journey seems unique. And so one of the things that I did was kind of modeling off that concept of what to expect when expecting, really try to figure out what those commonalities are, and then gather information around the commonalities so that then you can be empowered when you find yourself in one of those commonalities to get information that could be helpful to you. As you heard in my journey, my dad totaled the car, and so we took that away. But when you total the car, then guess what happens? You need to have some help in order to get your loved one to where they need to be. And having a discussion about the help often elicits a conversation about the home. Is the environment that they're currently living in, is that the best and most supportive place for them to be? If you decide that you need to make a change, then you're going to encounter the need to do a move, and planning the move and executing the move. And anytime you make a move, more often than not, it means downsizing. So purging as well as packing and then getting ready for a new environment. And then you'll move into the new environment. And over time, this is one of those things you'll constantly find yourself revisiting on multiple occasions. Okay. Scenario 2 is, which is also pretty common, don't know when it's going to happen, is a crisis where you need to go to the emergency room. And based on whatever that crisis was about, there are certain things you can do, and there are certain places that the medical team is going to send you after that business or after that visit. And that's where the crisis comes in. It also typically elicits a conversation about advanced care planning. Those conversations often come up after a crisis. When you're in a crisis, you may also end up having to make the tough decisions about medical care. And it's important to also understand what your hospice and palliative care options are. And so that's one of the conversations we talk about, the end of what you want your end or your loved ones in to look at. And from there, you have the death that takes place. And of course, after death, here you are in the midst of grieving, and everyone's asking you a bazillion questions, and you're trying to make decisions about the funeral plans. And so we cover that in the death. And from there, we also talk about grief and the grieving process. We don't do the Kubler-Ross grieving things, but it's more some practical things that you can think about. So you see that that's kind of another journey that you may go through. I also point out, especially for the moves, that there is always one last move, and that's packing up your loved one's belongings after they pass away. And the second thing I always point out is, for many of you on the phone, you may or may not have heard of the concept. I certainly didn't know about it when I was on my journey of anticipatory grief. And that's the grief that you feel as you watch and begin to realize that your loved one is not going to be that person that you've always known them to be, that they are not going to go through rehab and return. And so it's coming to grief, or coming to grips with that change, grieving about that, and beginning to incorporate that and realize that the end may be coming. You still may not know when it is, but you know things are not getting better. So these are all the twists and turns. But what I wanted to do is, okay, so we just talked about all the ADLs, and I'm going to talk about this chart helps you figure out how to put those ADLs in practice. So across the bottom, we start with staying in your home or aging in place, then independent living, assisted living, and a nursing home. And if you follow the yellow or orange line, you'll see as you move from staying in your home to a nursing home, if you're doing testing for the activities of daily living, what you'll find is their independence is declining as they move from one living environment to the other. By the same token, the things they need help on continue to increase as you move from one end to the other. And so if you had a chart like this, it helps you say, how many activities of daily living can they do? On the far left, that would be they could do 6. As they begin to get down to 1 or 2, that's on the right. So if they're at 3, maybe I'm looking at independent or assisted living. The other thing that this chart helps you figure out is if they stay in home and you bring in home help, you're talking about an average of $17,000 a year in out-of-pocket costs if you don't have insurance that covers that, up to over $100,000 if they're in a nursing home. So these are the things I'm trying to do is I'm trying to bring together the practicality of knowing the ADLs, rather than just giving you a description of what these different care environments are, give you tools so you can understand what the costs are and the level of support that would be provided in that environment relative to what you know your loved one needs. So this is where I'm going to kind of speed it up for us. So the first stop that we talk about is the car. So some of you, if your loved one is still driving, at some point in time, you're going to have that discussion about whether or not they can continue to drive, and if you decide that they're not going to continue to drive, what are the real alternatives for transportation? Next is the moves. You need to downsize. You need a plan to figure out how to do that downsizing. And so that's the things we cover in the moves. Next is the home. As you just saw in that chart, we've talked about, okay, where are they struggling with activities of daily living? So how do I find the right environment? What are the costs and benefits? Can I plan ahead to know what housing environment I might choose, as well as financing options? The next one is the help. This is about understanding all the different types of caregivers and range of helps and services that are out there and how to build your elder care network. We also focus on, because they're a big target of making sure that they're not falling victim to senior scams. I had mentioned about once you go and you have a crisis, you may want to do advanced care planning. Nobody wants to talk about death, but doing so and really kind of facing the different realities and trying to make those decisions, we give you help in that area. The crisis. We've kind of talked about this a couple of times, but this is when you have to go to the emergency room all of a sudden, what to take when you're there. And also there's basically 5 common places or common paths for once you get discharged from the hospital. So we tell you what those are and map those to the activities of daily living. So you kind of have a little preview of what to expect and what the social workers may be talking to you about doing with your loved one. The end, again, this is about palliative and hospice care. Is that the right thing for you? It's not the right thing for everyone, but unfortunately, you could get 6 months of hospice care, which also provides you in-home support, but Medicare pays for 6 months, but on average, people only use 18 days because they wait so long to make that decision. So this is something that as your loved one is beginning to have more and more problems, you might want to consider doing a little research on. Next is the death itself. This is all about planning the funeral, burial, cremation, avoiding getting scammed by funeral home directors, the things you need to do in the first couple of weeks, and some planning that you can do in advance. Last is grief. And here we don't kind of go through the stages of grief. Instead, what I talk about are the 3 different types of grief. Anticipatory, which I mentioned earlier, common or good grief, which is 6 months of just acute, horrible sense of pain and loss, followed by another 6 months of you kind of integrating that loss into your daily life.
And I also cover complicated grief because sometimes people just get stuck and they can't move forward. And so we talk about what those signs are and when you might want to go and get help for that.
Thank you for joining us on this journey, and catch us in the next episode.